This is a stimulus check update and daily news report. Got some big updates to share with you. Congress is talking about a new round of stimulus. I'll give you the latest details of what we know so far. I'll talk about the latest stimulus check articles of $1,400 and $2,000 checks. Experts are saying that we're going to have another year of record high inflation rates, and a new variant just came out and discovered in France. I'll give you some other more important updates as well. Hope you're having a terrific Thursday. If you appreciate the fact-based, fast-paced updates, hit the like button down below. So IHU, not really sure how to pronounce it, but new COVID variant with 46 mutations worries experts in France. So far, 12 people have been infected of the new variant in southern France. They don't know too much about it. This is just coming out, but it seems like every few weeks they're talking about a new COVID variant. Not sure when it'll end. Washington plans to distribute millions of at-home COVID tests and masks as Omicron surges. They said by the end of the month, they're going to distribute at-home tests and those masks for people to get more protected. And we have a new stimulus package. So Omicron has lawmakers talking about another stimulus round for businesses. Another article here, lawmakers begin talks on another round of stimulus coronavirus relief for businesses. So this is specifically for businesses. Looks like it is bipartisan so far. Democrats and Republicans are talking about this. Here's a video clip discussing more about it.
Well, Kelly, I can confirm, reporting from the Washington Post, that there are some early discussions between Republicans and Democrats about ways to provide more aid for businesses that have been hit by Omicron. Now, according to a source, Democratic Senator Ben Cardin, the chairman of the Small Business Committee, and Republican Roger Wicker, the ranking member of the Commerce Committee, have been in talks about a package based on their bill to provide another $50 billion for restaurants. Now, the Post reported that the total price tag for additional relief could be about $68 billion. Meanwhile, there's been an ongoing push in the House from about 60 lawmakers from both sides of the aisle to help not just restaurants, but also gyms and hotels as well. Minnesota Democratic Representative Dean Phillips is spearheading that effort, and in a letter to leadership, he wrote, "Tens of thousands of small businesses across the country are faced with the possibility of layoffs, reduced service or hours, or outright closure, barring additional federal relief." But already, key Republicans are throwing cold water on this idea. GOP Senator John Barrasso sent us this statement: "We need to fully open our economy instead of passing the buck and calling for more taxpayer bailouts." Now, some lawmakers had originally hoped they could attach this aid to the bigger social spending package, Kelly, but now that's going nowhere, so they're looking for other ways to keep this alive. Back over to you.
Which is interesting because, number one, I don't know if restaurants ever got the direct aid they've been pushing for. Number two, this is more a casualty of the Build Back Better plan dying than it is the spread of Omicron. And number three, is any other industry currently being targeted for relief at this point?
These are the only ones we've heard of so far, Kelly. The idea around this package, if it were to come to fruition, would that it'd have to be pretty narrow in order to get both Democrats and Republicans on board. You heard the argument there from a member of GOP leadership saying, this could contribute to increased inflation. So I think the desire would be to keep it pretty targeted and not include some of the other measures like the child tax credit or stimulus checks that have been the hallmark of the previous COVID relief packages.
Have restaurants or gyms received direct relief up until this point of the pandemic?
The best that I understand, Kelly, is that some of them have, but not all of them either qualify. Some of the money dried up very quickly, especially for the restaurants, I believe, and for some of the live entertainment venues. So the funding maybe didn't quite trickle down to all the folks who needed it. And so there's been this effort to re-up some of those programs. And certainly some of the funding could be unused COVID relief money that was dedicated to other sectors that they might be able to repurpose. Some of it might be new funding also.
So this stimulus package is still in the beginning stages, but it looks like it's just targeted for businesses. But it brings the question, stimulus update, will there be another payment because of Omicron variant? So if there are bipartisan discussions, meaning that Republicans are involved, most likely there's not going to be any stimulus checks, although Democrats would love to give out more stimulus checks. If the Republicans are involved in it, then probably not going to see any stimulus checks, but that could change. This could be a new phase where there are stimulus checks included in it somehow because Omicron goes out of control or because it's an election year. So I'll keep you updated on what happens with that new stimulus package. Also, latest stimulus check article, stimulus check $600 and $2,000 approved for some. So this is talking about the 345,000 Navajo tribe members who could get a $600 check for kids and $2,000 for adults. Then for the $2,000 per month to every American petition for forced stimulus check, currently at 2,998,000 signatures so far, almost at 3 million. And then you could claim a $1,400 stimulus check in 2022 with your tax return. So this is just talking about anyone who had a kid who was born in 2021, you could get a $1,400 stimulus check for that. When it comes to everyday life and prices, a survey came out and experts predict another year of decades high inflation. Despite a lot of lawmakers and Congress saying that it's transitory, it's only going to last a few months, looks like it is not going anywhere. It's still above 6%. So inflation still high. Here is what a lawmaker, Senator Elizabeth Warren, has to say about that.
Time now for Money, Power, Politics. We told you inflation saw its highest jump in nearly 30 years. But at the very same time, corporations are raking in their best profits in 70 years. And they're using inflation as a reason to pass these higher costs onto customers. And some Democrats are pouncing on this, with President Biden taking aim at the meat industry specifically this week.
The big companies are making massive profits. While their profits go up, the prices you see at the grocery stores go up commensurate. This reflects the market being distorted by lack of competition.
To solve it and bring in Massachusetts Democratic Senator Elizabeth Warren. Senator Warren, always good to see you. When people hear about price controls addressing inflation, they freak out. They're saying, what is this? The government is now regulating prices. This is socialism. But what you're really doing is addressing monopolies. You're trying to create more competition and a broader-based capitalistic system. Can you explain that?
Sure, and you've got it exactly right. You know, we have laws in place that have been in place, some of them for over a century, in order to protect competition, because we fully understand that very competitive markets where there are lots of sellers and lots of buyers, are going to produce the lowest prices for consumers, the most innovation. That's supposed to be the magic. That's where it all happens. But when you see enormous concentration in markets, that is, you have only one or two players, maybe three players, in some areas only one, then what happens is they start telling you exactly what the price will be. That's where real price push comes. They determine what the price is, and they maximize their own profits. And the market is no longer beating those prices down and creating more innovation. And so what we've seen happen in the U.S. economy for decades now is there's been increasing competition in one industry after another. And now with the pandemic, with supply chain kinks, with inflation, people say, oh my gosh, who are running these big corporations, this is our chance. And they get in and ratchet those prices up. So what's happened is that giant corporations in areas where there's already been a lot of concentration have been able to ratchet profits up, not just to cover their own increases in costs, but ratchet profits up to expand their profits enormously in a time of economic stress.
How do you separate the two, though, between small business and big business, right? Think about big box stores like Walmart. Their size and scale is so big that they don't have to raise prices so much because their volumes are big. They can afford to pay workers more. They can afford to give their workers more perks, which are great. But it's the small businesses out there that are now having to raise their prices so much because their shipping costs are so high, their labor costs are so high. How do we address the mom and pops? Because they're getting squeezed.
You know, you're absolutely right that one of the problems we have when you see concentration in industries is the mom and pops just get squeezed out of the game altogether. I was so glad to see President Biden step in on the meat industry, for example, because the consequence of the concentration there, we're down to basically 4 meat processors for the entire nation, means that the smaller competitors have been knocked out, as well as the farmers, the smaller farmers that want to be able to sell in a competitive market where different processors are offering different prices. Monopoly hurts not only the consumer in terms of the prices that the monopolist demands, but it also squeezes out the small businesses. And that's why it's so powerfully important that we finally start enforcing the monopoly laws, the anti-monopoly laws that are currently on the books. And I think a strong signal in this area would be really important. Department of Justice, the FTC, to step in and say, we're going to enforce the laws here and start breaking up these giants.
Isn't it really tricky to do this, though? When you think about more regulation, one of the dirtiest secrets is more regulation helps the biggest companies because they can afford it, right? I think back to after the financial crisis, more regulations were put in place, and the biggest banks out there, like a JP Morgan, had regulatory capture. They could afford to hire 1,000 more lawyers. But if you were a small or mid-sized bank, you might go out of business because you couldn't afford to. How do you differentiate between the two? Because it's those smaller guys that are going, I'm not going to be able to afford this. The big guys can.
Stephanie, think of it this way. The government has 2 principal tools to work with. One is regulation, and that's where you just kind of sit on the shoulder and say, okay, you can't do that and you can't do that, but you can do this. The other is antitrust law, to say, break these giants up and let them get out there and compete in an open market. The tool that we have failed to use for decades now has been the antitrust laws, so that we get more and more concentration. Think of the example right now, for example, with grocery stores. Remember how many grocery stores there used to be? And now what you've got is a handful of giant chains. And then what happens? Kroger, their profits just in the third quarter of 2021 were almost $900 million. That was more than 3 times what their profits were in the same time period in 2019. Now, if they are able to expand profits, not expand prices, expand profits, that's because they have a lot of market dominance here. If we move in on antitrust law, break up these giant corporations, then we get real competition, and then we get markets that are truly competitive. That's good for small businesses, it's good for consumers, and it actually, in many cases, reduces the need for regulatory oversight. You can count on the markets doing what they need to do.
What are your thoughts? Is Congress doing enough to help out with inflation? Should there be more stimulus aid? Should there be more help for more people? Let me know your thoughts on all that down in the comments below. And that is all the news that I have for you today to hopefully brighten your day a bit. Here's my daughter Bella's tip of the day.
Hi guys, this is Belle. This is the tip of the day. I want to tell you something what you should always do. So when you want to do something, do it. Like if you want to go out in outer space, do it. If you want to say something, do it. Say whatever you want and do whatever you want. And make it excitement. Bye.
Thank you so much for watching. Appreciate your support. Today is day 6 of my juice cleanse, and I played pickleball last night and was about to pass out. They say that you shouldn't exercise or do any type of exertion when you're doing a juice cleanse like I'm doing, and yeah, basically almost passed out there. But I survived and I still feel really good. Tomorrow is my 7th day, and then I get to eat my first meal on Saturday. So I haven't eaten since last year, which is pretty crazy. But anyways, if you want to check out my latest Wise Buys video of a stand-up desk, or a stand-up desk converter, you could click up here, and I'll see you in the next video. Take care, be safe. Thank you for watching.